Good evening, Wild Earthlings. My name's Ben Southall. Welcome to Wild Chats Australia, in conjunction with Wild Earth, the ultimate clothing and gear store here in Australia. We haven't done one of these for a little while. The Wild Chats format is now here. We have this amazing ability to sit with someone who is involved in the world of adventure, someone who loves the great outdoors, and we chat for about an hour, all about their life, their background, past adventures, present adventures, and what the future holds. We've spoken to people that have crossed the polar ice caps. We've spoken to people that have summited Everest. And today we've got someone who is on the opposite end of the Queensland coast from me, Kirsty Wirth, who is up on the sunny coast. Good evening, Kirsty.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm always up for big grand chats, so I'm very excited about this.
And Kirsty, but let's be perfectly honest, we've got a bit of a sort of history over the last few years in a way that we've done lots of little micro adventures together. We've been to adventure festivals together. I know of you because of your business, Kultured Wellness. We like people to intro themselves and give a bit of a bio. So this is going to throw it at you, but can you give me a 30-second elevator pitch on who you are and what you do?
Well, I think if you gave me 30 seconds, who gives anyone 30 seconds? But I think ultimately I'm an extremely curious person that wants to encourage and inspire people to connect with nature and their bodies. I come from a background of education, but yeah, like without the natural environment and all my big adventures, I don't think I would be here today. So it kind of filters through my life and what I do. So yeah, I'm very curious. I think in the end, that's probably how I would say my elevator pitch is.
I think it's the common thread that runs through everybody that we chat to on this show. I mean, Wild Earth themselves are very much the advocates of the great outdoors. Everybody that we chat to has got that common thread that they might have a 9-to-5 job, they might run an adventure travel business, they might run a nutritional business. But their happy place is when they can down tools or take their tools outside and immerse themselves in the great outdoors. And it seems to be sort of what your ethos and your life is all about.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because when I grew up, I certainly my family was heavily into sport. So definitely we had like an active lifestyle, and we would spend summers like plonked in the caravan park on the beach 8 weeks at a time. My dad was a teacher. So there was space and time to be outside, but I didn't actually engage with any kind of outdoor adventures until I was 19. And so for me, my sort of outdoor adventure life of getting into, what I just love most wasn't till quite late compared to some people like Atlas, for example. So, it was quite late. And then I went on this grand adventure of teaching outdoor ed and working in an outdoor shop and doing big adventures, like really exciting stuff. And then I kind of went a bit corporate and went into academia and did very high education and studies. And then I started my business, and I knew I would do it somehow, but I've managed to weave in all of my adventure and, wanting to get out into the natural spaces into my business. So it's like,
but it seems like that's such a crucial thing to do. You tasted the concept of what it's like to be involved in the outdoors with the outdoor ed stuff, but then you sort of got the knowledge and the background and the qualifications in a way to sort of justify the concept of a business.
Yeah.
And then the business has really sort of grown out of that.
Yeah.
We'll just go back. I'd love to sort of talk about those early ones. You said you sort of took on some big adventures. What did they look like?
Gosh.
What was those first big things that were on your menu?
Yeah, well, we're of the same era then. So when I went to India when I was 19, like I'm tall and, blonde hair, and going to India when I was 19. And, you can only imagine this is like 1996 or something. No, 94. Can you imagine like going over there? You were probably over around that era.
And you were just stared at, no doubt.
Completely stared at.
Like this.
Just, completely touched up, filled up. Like I'd wake up on an overnight train and like someone was stroking my face, and some pretty epic stuff. And those kinds of adventures of like really shaking up my understanding of what is known to be true. Grew up in a very conservative Adelaide environment, and then like went over to India and spent a lot of time in Asia, and I worked a lot in different countries around the world. And this was back in the day you could go on a plane with an ice axe and crampons in your carry-on, right?
and probably a cigarette in the back as well.
100%, the last two rows. So
Yeah.
like my grand adventures were very much based around either rock climbing, mountain bike riding, hiking. Did quite a bit of ice climbing and mountaineering. And so it was really just like, where are we going next? What kind of crew can I go with? And when I started working at the outdoor shop, that was like fun play people on tap. And then obviously you get all
Yes.
the
Yeah.
gear. And then I used to do a lot of talks for the outdoor shops. And so, some of my adventures were just really exciting, but I look back on them now and my 15-year-old daughter is like, she's never walking out the front door. Like, there's no way that I'm going to let her do
This is a really difficult sort of decision for parents. You know, there's a lot of people that sort of watch this listen to the podcast and watch this that have got young children, and there's this whole thing about, you know, the earlier you can get them into the baby carrier, the better.
Yeah.
But for some, it totally attracts them and hooks them for life. And for some, they will never, ever do it again. And they will want to be in a corporate job. It's such a toss up. I mean, I think as long as you sow the seed, you've done your job as a parent.
Oh, yeah. Like I had Noah in camping at 6 weeks and I think Maya was 4 months. And it's part of their life. They don't sort of know any different. And also when your body's resilient, so when they're young and they're fit, if they're fit, it's easy and it's fun. And so that's also the other thing. It's getting them started early and nourishing them. And, you know, I'm obviously deeply passionate about kids being nourished and well. They just love it out there. But it's harder now because they've got other reasons to stay home. There's more dopamine pinging sort of attractions for them. So it's very, very difficult then.
We won't turn this into a parental podcast, but I think I've got exactly that. I've got those opinions in a way as well on what it's like. And do I starve my boy of, you know, the ability to be on an iPad when he asks for it because his friends are, or do you just sort of put your foot down and say, no, that's another question for another night? I want to get the opinion of your parents for what you were doing when you were going on those solo trips around India, because obviously that's a big step to go and do that sort of thing. Even now, for sort of single female independent travelers to be out there doing that sort of thing, it's a big challenge for the individual, but also the parents.
Like so when I went to India, I went to visit someone over there who was working with the Tibetan government in exile. They were writing a book and a part of Australian Volunteers Abroad. So I went in there and I was able to work as well. And so I was very excited. I got to meet His Holiness as part of that process and stay up in Dharamsala. And on our like afternoons and days off, we would go and train and, you know, climb and get fit, ready to go over to the Himalaya. And I called from Delhi to say that I'd arrived. Yeah. And then I sent an email to say I'm going over to Nepal. And then 8 weeks later, I sent another email to say I'm back.
Wow. And it's a lot of trust from parents to be able to sort of just say, I mean, they've given you the wings to fly, and now they've got to be brave enough that you're actually going to not fly into the sun.
Yeah. So did they have a choice? Probably not. I would have gone anyway, right? So, but it's really interesting, which, you know, comes back to that being curious enough to be self-empowered, you know, confident, resourceful, and like, you know, being able to problem solve. Like I've been, and you would have been the same, like I've been stuck at border crossings at like 3 a.m, and there's one like guy that's got a gun and you're just like, how's this going to turn out? Or, you know, like there was one grand adventure where I was up in Dharamsala and we'd been over to climb, you know, be around the Himalaya and come back. And then I had to catch a bus down to Delhi to then leave to go to Germany. And I got on the Tibetan bus because I just had got to know the Tibetan people. I just think the Tibetan people are so beautiful. And so I was like, I'm going to get on this bus with these guys because I feel relatively safe. And I had my bag and all my climbing gear and everything on the top. And the first stop, they pulled all of the Tibetan people off the bus and left me on the bus on my own. And this is a night bus. So I was like, what's going on? They said, look, a monk has been murdered in Dharamsala. And so everyone here is a suspect because the bus left a half an hour afterwards or something. So, of course, they're like, well, you know, maybe the murderer is fleeing on the bus. So, the first thing you're like, have I been sitting on a bus with a murderer? Like, who's
What a
murdered a monk?
story.
Like,
A monk,
yeah,
of all things.
I know. And then they all get off the bus. And at that point, they were my safety peeps, right? So they all get off the bus. And then I'm just sitting on this bus with the Indian driver and his porter just staring at me in the rear vision mirror. And this was a night bus. So, night buses there, you're on it all night and it's all happening. And I was like, this is it. Like this is it. There's absolutely no way. So
How old were you then, do you reckon?
19.
19,
So
my God.
yeah. So my brain is like, if I can climb out that window and get up onto the roof where like I knew my climbing gear was, and I knew I could kind of get some weapons. Like I
out of there.
through the whole thing.
I've got a really, really dangerous carabiner here. And maybe the
I know. And then I could just, and whether this was true or not, this is my perception, but these guys were just staring me down, and I just saw that, well, the bus turned this way, but the sign to Delhi said that way. And I was like, oh,
where am I going now?
Yeah, like this is it. And I was like, okay, two choices here. You always run, you move forward and you move towards the situation. And so I had a Walkman. Remember Walkmans, right, with the actual tape in it. And I just walked straight up, and I just did not stop talking for the whole evening. I was like, I'm just gonna go in there. And I was like, have you seen a Walkman? Do you want to listen? It's music. Oh, wow. And then they turned the bus around and went back the other way towards Delhi. They literally turned the bus around.
You probably avoided the problem like that.
100%. And so I was like, just move towards it. And so many situations in my life with like outdoor sports, or when I was in the tsunami, or, or business, like everything is just move in and lean into it and problem solve, and, just go, as opposed.
Love that attitude. Yeah. I love that attitude. Lean in. The phrase of the night so far. I'm only 12 minutes in. Amazing. So, what was you were going there to train as a yoga instructor? Is that what it was all about? Because before that, so what was the reasoning?
No, we were going over to go up to Everest Base Camp and have a look at Armada Blum, and do we want to climb and do some mountaineering over there? So.
But you don't just drop into the Himalayas and suddenly hit 6,500, 7,000 meter peaks. What was the sort of foundation blocks to get you to there? Had you found your inspiration in Australia, or was it another place?
Yeah, so I met a boy who was a very hot climber, and that's why I suddenly started loving the outdoors.
There's always a subplot.
I mean, I could say I just fell in love with it, but no, the first step was someone that I met, and he was like, hey, do you want to come out climbing? I was like, no idea, but I want to come out climbing.
I've been doing it forever.
Yes. So and then my first ever overnight hike with him was just a complete disaster. I have no idea why I decided that I would ever do that again. I mean, we walked all night covered in leeches, fell in rivers, never set up a tent. Like, it was just horrific. Like, it's the story you never want to have, but when you look back, you're like, I have such a cool first hike story.
But it almost can't get worse than that. So did you kept it going, even though, I mean, did the relationship last longer than the love for the outdoors? It seems like not.
Yeah, no, good couple of years. Yeah. So did a whole heap of whitewater stuff in Australia. And I was able to explore all the different types of outdoor sports through that. And had a leech.
How did the Himalayas grab you for the first time? We take Best Side Ventures has got a couple of trips going. This year we got someone who's currently actually probably arriving in Gorakshep tomorrow, so a day out from Everest Base Camp. And we got a group of 16 going in October. It's a pretty special place in the world, and it's always nice to see Australians that have never been to the Himalayas have their first eyeball on the big peaks.
Yeah. So for me, that was my first introduction to big peaks, right? After that, I went to New Zealand, and I worked in France, and I went up to Norway, and I went all through South America for a year and ran rivers in South America and did all sorts of stuff. But as an Australian from South Australia, that was my first, holy smokes, these mountains are impressive. So my kind of training ground was Mount Arapiles and the Grampians, and going and climbing up at Minari and Flinders Ranges. So can you like that? It can't get any more like out, chalk and cheese when you think about it.
Absolutely, the contrast of it. I mean, this is interesting. It's good segue, and I hope this show gets broadcast before the 12th of May because we're actually doing some World Earth Everest Base Camp information nights, both at the Burley store and the Brisbane store, just because it does have that. It's got that name there. Going up to the Himalayas, going up to Everest Base Camp. It's a very busy place right now. There's probably 1,200 people living there.
Yeah.
The curiosity. It's not necessarily just a tick list. It's a curiosity of getting yourself and testing yourself against those elements. How did you go with altitude and elevation for the first time?
Actually went quite well. So surprisingly, my partner at the time, he actually had a little bit of trouble. And, you never know because everyone's bodies are so different. So, yeah, I mean, I landed with classic, came into Lukla. We walked out to Jerry, but came into Lukla and had the runs, and I was so depleted. But I got over that, and yeah, I didn't do so bad actually. I was a bit concerned, but I realized after doing so much other altitude stuff for my first time, it actually went pretty well. Very well. Yeah.
I was going to leave the segue through to Everest Base Camp to a bit later on in the chat, but I think it's probably pretty relevant now. In the last 2016 was my first year of heading there and filming there. I know now, having taken multiple groups of clients, that gut health and keeping your stomach as regular and solid as possible is the key to success at altitude, because as soon as you go downhill, there's not enough red blood cells, there's not enough oxygen to repair and make you better. So gut health is such an important part of anything with endurance and altitude.
Yeah. If I could take my gut and my body now back to do some of back basically to do everything all over again, oh my gosh, it would be like the best thing ever, which is why I'm so passionate about that for my kids. Like I want them to do adventures feeling so well, because my gut health was really poor that whole time, and I had a lot of pain and a lot of injuries, and it was not fun actually, especially as a female. It was not fun in multiple situations. And if my gut was like it is now, like I go on big stuff now and I take clients hiking with me and we have big Kultured Wellness hikes. Like it's just so easy. Like it's so easy.
It's interesting because it's never, when I first went to do the altitude stuff, I never really put that correlation together between if my stomach feels healthy, then I will just be able to get on and do things. It just takes away another fear factor, another problem. And there's enough clients that have sort of got there and they've gone on the first day and they've had the shower water in Kathmandu, or they've gone for a meal with a family because it was such a nice invitation, and and done everything, the things you shouldn't do when you're traveling. And then day one out of a 12-day or 15-day or 30-day hike, all of a sudden your body is on the downhill. It's such an important element to keep that regularity and that thing. And it becomes the conversation between the clients. Everyone arrives on the first day and everyone's just getting to know each other. And by 48 hours in, you're talking about how solid your poo is.
100%. 100%. There's nothing like, high-fiving someone, especially when you're really out bush and you're high-fiving somoone because you've done the most epic bush poo. Or now with the pots, right? You've got to take the pots out into wilderness areas. High-fiving, because it's all a very wonderful process of getting everything in the pot, and it's not a problem. But yeah, I mean,
it's good. We just did Chile. We just had Chile a month ago, and it was exactly that. We had to carry drain pipes in Patagonia with the caps on the end, and we had the bags with the lime in, and the whole thing was the embarrassment of the first day. But then after that, the confidence of, we had someone who openly said, "Oh, I shat my pants this morning," amongst the group, and everyone was just like, "Oh, that's okay." And then by the end of it, like you say, the high fives, with a glove on or sanitized hands, we actually had a solid one. There's satisfaction in that.
Yeah, I can't begin to express that most of our serotonin, which is our neurotransmitter, where we feel deep joy, and when we feel that real kind of, you get to the top of the mountain, right? And you're going to feel some joy when you're up there anyway. The endorphins are pumping, it's all happening. But if you've got diarrhea and your gut is a mess, you simply can't make the serotonin that goes into the brain. So when you, I've been on top of summits and just gone, oh, great, excellent, I'm here, whatever. I just want to get down. I just feel so sick. Oh, I've got to go and
it's a shocking memory to take away.
Yeah. Whereas when you've got serotonin, you get to the top and you're like, oh, let's take another picture. Let's savor this moment. Let's just like really drink it in. Let's just deeply appreciate like what we're here for. Let's be grateful for this moment, as opposed to like, my knees hurt. Am I going to get off this mountain? I'm in the death zone. Am I ever going to get out of this? And, like it's such a different experience when your gut is making serotonin versus if your gut is making neurotoxins. And that can be really, really bad space to be. And I have seen a lot of climbers and a lot of mountaineers, and I've seen a lot of death because people's guts were not helping them to make appropriate decisions in executive function, have resilience, be able to plan, be resourceful, be settled. So for me, when I look at gut health as like probably the most important thing to have completely rock solid if you're going to go out on expedition. Because cool story, I'm going to tell you a cool story. Two or 3 years ago, we took it was just down in Victoria, we took 12 Kultured Wellness clients out for a hike. So 5 days, multi-day hike. And like one of the clients had a lot of his bowel removed, and I'd been working with him for like 3 years. So he'd gone from medicated anxiety and lost, he's obviously had parts of his bowel removed for Crohn's, got so well, he's like, let's do it. We're going to go on this 5-day hike. Never done anything like it before. And we've got all these clients out there and we're measuring their heart rate and we're measuring like their blood pressure and we're measuring their sleep scores and what do you like out there and how's your health? And things didn't go to plan. Let's just say we made the first camp that night, didn't make it to camp 2, had to randomly just stay like on a saddle. This was on the crosscut soar. So if you know that when you're up there, you got no one's going to come and save you up there. There's no emergencies. And then on the 3rd day, we really didn't make it anywhere. And we got to the top of Mount Buggery. I mean, it was never going to end well, was it? Did you hear that? There's massive thunder and lightning.
It's really happening up on the sunny coast, isn't it? Not so sunny tonight.
Yeah. So we got to the top of Mount Buggery. We've been walking all day. These clients are like, they've had a really big day. They have no idea that shit is going down. They've got no idea. They're just like high-fiving each other. They're all like eating the way that, I really encourage people to eat on hikes. So no one's in pain. Everyone's full of energy. Everyone's super well slept, doing high-five poos. And then we get up to the top and we're like, so we don't have any water and there's no water here. And the closest water is like about another 8K walk. And so we're just going to stay here and you guys are going to like eat. And they all had dehydrated food. So it's like, you're just going to basically eat your snacks for dinner because there's no water to dehydrate.
Hydrating, yeah.
And then, like I'm 50 next year and I've got a few war wounds in my body. And one of the guides and I were like, well, we have to go off for a walk tonight. And so exploded the pack, 8 o'clock. I went off with a 24-year-old or something. And I was, 48 at the time. And we walked along the whole crosscut soar, climbed up a few things, went down a few things, filled my pack up with 30 kilos of water, and then, walked back. And so,
wow, just like that, because you can.
Because you can. And I was definitely not in my peak condition, at that time because I was going out hiking with a bunch of clients. And I just was stoked on life. I wasn't tired. I wasn't in pain. I was like, I reckon I got another mountain in me. Like I was literally for my 50th. I reckon I've got Mount Cook in me.
Were the clients awake and waiting for their meals, or was it just a nice breakfast? A nice breakfast when it arrived.
Sleep, and then magically all of their bladders had been filled up overnight. And
what they don't know doesn't hurt them, hey?
But in those situations, you can really curse things, and oh my gosh, we're in a stick and all this kind of stuff. But if your body and your gut's working, I was like, this is awesome. I haven't had an adventure for a while. Like, this is great.
It's amazing. I think the point you were touching on there, it's amazing how you can be an extremely resilient, quick thinking, fit, organised individual when everything is going right.
Yes.
But when things start to go wrong and you've got that dulled brain because you're not feeling great and you're more worrying about the next rumble of the stomach or not having the energy or looking up at a hill with anticipation as opposed to the challenge that lies ahead, it's amazing how quickly even the fast-moving, quick, fit people get taken down a step or
100%.
two.
And because I fuel on ketones, so I can literally go like a slow tractor for 4 days. Like like I don't really go past first gear when I'm, in that state, but I can just keep going. And I was obviously carrying like 30, 40 kilos. And I don't know if you've done Mount Buggery, but coming up the other side, it is literally like, it was, like 3 in the morning coming up the side of this pack. I'm like, I am not a Sherpa. Like, this is like not how I'm designed. But yeah, like too funny though. Before we set out at that 8 o'clock at night, I was like, okay, stop. There is a bit of water. I'm making my special like drink. I'm going to put some, ketones in it. I'm going to put some mushrooms in it. And I like made myself this like jungle juice. And I'm sure that's what got us over the line.
Powered you through to the end. Rewind to the Himalayas. Get back into there. Peaks and summits in those early days. Then, did you have a sort of a list of them, or was it just what was offered up and what you wanted to go and do?
Yeah, and also what you could afford, right? And then even we didn't even know where would you sign up for things, and like it was just so different. Like I would probably get a shock if I went over there now, because there was barely anyone around. Like literally, we were there on Christmas Day, and I think
what were you getting up? That's a cold time of year to be over there in the Northern Hemisphere as well. That's a good challenging time.
Yeah, it was very cold, very, very cold. So like, a Mirror Peak and Arma de Blam and like going around and having a bit of fun on those ones. But it wasn't until I got to France that I really started to get a bit more technical with my climbing, because I worked in a outdoor ed camp in France up in the mountains for a season. And so on my day off, it was just like, let's go. So, but there was rivers to run, or, there was just so much adventure. It was like, which one do you choose? Which was great.
I've seen a few mountain ranges in different continents and different parts of the world. Have you got a favourite that you that you've been to, and some of that's still on that radar of places you'd like to go?
Oh, do I have a favourite? I definitely love like the real I love the Northern Hemisphere. Like when I go to Norway, when I went there, well, I've been there many times, I feel home there. So there's something about way up north, like the Lofotens and all through there. I'm just like, oh, this feels so good. I actually feel like I'm home.
You've been doing summer stuff there, and were you doing rafting, the rafting industry? Because it's fairly big, isn't it, out there in the summertime?
Yeah, not so much in Norway. Yeah, so went on and and had adventures there, but not guiding or anything. So yeah, so lots.
The reason we came out to the Himalayas as well is when I sort of led my treks there, I've gravitated now towards making sure that gut health is really important for not just me. And it's the first thing that I talk to our clients about, is that you will succeed if you will look after your gut. You will get there. You've done the training, avoiding any injuries. If you can keep your gut health good over the next 6 to 7 days, you'll get to Everest Base Camp and you'll tick your box and you'll be happy and you get that enthusiastic high five.
Yeah.
It came to me 2 years ago where the situation was rather forced on me that my little 5-year-old boy at the time, Atlas, had to come with me to work for those 2 weeks Everest Base Camp. There was no, we're trying to set a record. We're not trying to get a kid there just for the sake of it. Sophie was away with work. She had no option to take him and look after him. There was no family or in-laws here. He just had to come with. And one of the things I did before that was, if Atlas failed, in terms of if his gut failed, I would have to evacuate with him and I would have to leave my clients. That was my big fear. It was not about him not getting there. It was more about how I looked after my clients. So I sort of came to you before that and said, Kirsty, we've got this 5-year-old. How do I best prepare him to be able to take on, he's going to be chewing his fingernails. He's going to be playing in the snow. How can we prep his body as much as possible? And you then dug into the brain of Kirsty and Kultured Wellness and came up with sort of a recipe. Talk me through the sort of process to get to that, where I have a package arrive and all of a sudden I can prep my kid for the journey.
Yeah. So it's more about making sure that we know that the microbes within your gut are anti-inflammatory, like the microbes produce those anti-inflammatory cytokines, that they're producing the energy, that they're supporting digestion, and that they're also abundant enough that if you get giardia or if you get food poisoning and E. coli, that your body is resilient and your gut's resilient enough to deal with it. So there is the prep work that is so important, because you've got to go with an army in your gut. Like, it's like, to me,
Nice description.
yeah, like if you want to go and do cool stuff and your calf muscles are really strong and you've got a six pack and like you're built and you're buffed and you're doing a really good job of that, you should be spending more attention on building the microbe muscles in your gut just as much as your external body. Like, it's that important. So for me, like when I work with people and help them to go on big adventures, it's like, so have you eaten your fermented foods today? Have you had your prebiotics? Have you worked on your digestive capabilities and your stomach acid? Have you built that digestive fire? And of course, kids are still building their microbiome up until the age of 7. And so when you're taking them into environments where they basically their microbial community adjusts to that environment. So, I mean, he's so blessed because he's going to have all this epic diversity. I remember seeing a family that all of their gut microbiome stool samples, like their reports, but they were from South Africa. I was like,
Yeah.
I've never even seen these microbes before. Like, what the heck is this? So, and they were all like producing, because our microbes produce B vitamins, they produce energy. So they produce butyrate that makes ATP, and they produce, the ATP that goes into your liver to produce ketones, and they'll produce the serotonin, and they'll produce your B vitamins and everything that you need. And so you've got to have them built up and be really robust and strong. And they also produce like the appropriate lactic acid that helps us with our body to make muscle. And you can't get fit if you don't have microbes. Like, there's just so many reasons. So yes, there's that prep work. And so as soon as you start training for a trip, you should be training your gut. It should be 100% focus, 100%. And then whilst you're on the trip, yeah, like there is definitely, and we've worked this out with you guys for sure. Like, I think we've hit the jackpot with exactly what you need in those environments of getting the right bacteria strains and making sure it protects you against any, especially in the small intestine and stomach for food poisoning. And then the post care, because of course you'll come back with something. And the amount of people that I treat and that we treat in clinic that, I was never right after that trip to Bali. Then I got an autoimmune condition, and then I got, this, and then I needed knee surgery. Oh yeah, I can't play sport anymore. It just kind of can't, and you just see this
decline off the back of that sort of thing. And it's things that they bring home from the once in a lifetime trip that becomes for the rest of their lifetime.
And zero information and understanding about that, because there's not awareness. So that makes me upset that, it was never treated. And it's like, oh yeah, I think I kind of got over it, but never really did. And it's like, yeah, my hair's been falling out and just feel really, just don't have it in me anymore. Like this kind of stuff. And if
that mindset.
and if only it was like, okay, you came back and you had like a ripper of something that went through you when you were away, and it's like, right, let's deal with this. And let's so if they, people come and see us in clinic when they've come back from something, and beautiful herbs to kind of flush things through, then do the rebuild, and then really start to work on building that gut back up for the next grand adventure. Off we go again.
I think I need to. So this is 3 points to this conversation in this sense. What I'm going to talk about now. Atlas had a runny poo the first day he got to Kathmandu. We always called it the after plane poo, and then he was solid as anything all the way through. So for a 7-year-old to go through that, there is definitely something with what we were medicated with to be given to look after him pre, during, and post. So that was a massive tick on that one. One of the things we talked about a long time ago was the ability for gut health to improve endurance. So we talked to a lot of endurance athletes about how they go on and on and on, how they can keep ticking. That was a really interesting podcast that we did maybe 3 or 4 years ago now during COVID, all about endurance and gut health.
Yeah, 100%. So depending on what fuel source that you want to run on. So I think I hope there's more information and there's more understanding about people knowing that our body's a duality like a car, and we run on two fuel sources. And one fuel source, which is glucose, is actually very hard wearing on the body. It's quite energy expensive to utilize it, and it gives off a lot of they're called free radicals, but a lot of compounds that will cause injury within your body. So you only really rely on glucose when it's like a real big, like I gotta push, I gotta go hard, or you're doing some like crazy sprint work, or that real sort of fast twitch, really having to go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
But the cleanest fuel source, where pathways within our body, anti-inflammatory pathways are activated, is burning ketones. And so we want to actually switch over. And when you burn ketones, you can just go for days and days. And like I've tried this a lot. Like when I did the Walls of Jerusalem in 2019, I was like, I'm gonna see if I can do this fasted and completely like in a deep ketogenic state. So I was out for 5 days, so full pack, like out for 5 days. And I was like, our bodies are so cool. Like I just was,
because, and so there was a considerable noticeable difference on doing it in that state.
Like out of control difference. And so, once again, that day that I did that water haul, I got into bed and I'd been walking for, I think it was 22 hours. And I was not in, my sort of condition I was back in the day, where I would just, wake up one day and go,
you have to walk up and do that. Yes. Yeah. There was something internally that was keeping that fire burning, not just your overall fitness.
Yeah. It was definitely not it was just like, oh yeah. I mean, my brain knows I can do hard stuff. So there was that, like, I can just go into like, this is fine, I'll just do this. But yeah, like 22 hours, I slept for 3 hours or something, and then got up and did another whole, like, I don't know, 10-hour walk with a.
So for someone, so let's say we've got a trail running community listening now. We've got maybe some long distance paddlers. We've got the like guys and girls that like doing their long distance multi-day hikes and things. How on a day-to-day basis, without breaking the bank, can they improve their gut health and look at bettering their inner self?
Yeah. So fermented foods is like, if we're looking at best bang for your buck, fermented foods is the best place to start. It is such a quick win. It's super easy. And I know, like, when people are training for those big things, they want to open the fridge, reach in, pull it out, and then eat it and put it back again. I understand we're not going to have, like, paddlers in the kitchen baking cakes. Like, I get that. So the ferments are, for me, they're a fast food. They're in a jar in the fridge. You pull them out, you eat them, and then you put them back in again.
So, strip it back down even further. Yeah. What is a fermented food? What does it appear like? Do you buy it in a shop or do you make it yourself? How does that all work?
So a fermented food, most people know sauerkraut or kimchi. Or now there's a bit more understanding of kefir, and most people know what kombucha is now. So these are great. I'm so happy. Not, weird words to people these days. 20 years ago, they were very weird words. But I mean, you can go to the BP in Tugun, and there's fermented foods in the Fox Pantry there. Like, they stock the Kultured Wellness culture.
Isn't that the best shop?
But
the best BP station.
I know, but it's just so cool how far we've come. So most people understand those as fermented foods. So what happens is, in that jar, the food inside the jar has, the glucose in it, and it's got all of its carbohydrates. And through the fermenting process, those carbohydrates get eaten up by the probiotic bacteria, and it turns into a food-based probiotic. And so you can get it in many, you can have coconut yogurt, you can have, your kefirs, you can have your krauts. Now, it has become so commercialized that a lot of the ones in the shops aren't therapeutic. So they are nice, they're sour, and they're doing something. But I eat ferments every day, so it's a bit different. But for you, getting prepped for a big trip, I would recommend making your own, because then you know what you're putting in there is of that therapeutic standard. So the ones that I developed, Kultured Wellness cultures, have all those strains for that optimal performance and health and all of those sorts of things. You make it at home in your jar, and then you have a serve every day, and you're building out that community. You're building your gut muscles, so you're buffed on the inside and the outside by the time.
The thing I loved, the thing I didn't know about it before I tried this for the first time, I was doing the kefir and I also did some of the yogurt as well, the yogurt, sorry. The things that I learned there is that you don't just buy your 1,000 milliliters and you consume your 1,000 milliliters and you buy another 1,000. It's almost like the sourdough with the starter. So there's the mechanism to keep then growing that probiotic into the next one and the next one. So it's almost like you're sort of doing yourself a business injustice by having something that's so beautifully reproductive.
Yeah. And for our cultures, you can get about 5 batches out of them, and then they start losing that efficacy. So we do like people to buy a new batch after every 5 times, because you want that therapeutic strain. So, for example, there's the Saccharomyces boulardii that I get you on every time you go away. My culture is really one of the only cultures that has in there the Saccharomyces boulardii. And so you're having that every time you make that yogurt. And then after the 5th or 6th batch, the efficacy of knowing that SB is in there starts to drop off. So, you change it.
I should have done my quick, on the half an hour, I meant to have done this little part, which I just realised. I'm so involved in the mind of what is going on here. You are currently listening to Wild Earth Australia's Wild Chats. My name is Ben Southall. I'm the founder of Best Life Adventures, an adventure travel company based here in Crumlin on the Gold Coast. And I'm currently chatting to the very interesting Kirsty Wirth, who is the founder of Kultured Wellness based up on the Sunshine Coast. Multi-continent adventurer, multi-peak challenger, endurance athlete, and also mum as well. So very, very full-time mum with that one. When I just want to go back as well to, weirdly, my poo, because I remember you said to me all the
time, so that's fine.
you said to me, oh, you need to get yourself your sample done. There was this very easy to use home kit, and I didn't send you the sample. I sent you the results. And then out of that result sheet that I got back, you then went through and went, oh my God, this is fascinating. Have you been to India any time in your life? And all of a sudden, I've got things inside me that have been there since I was there maybe a decade before. That's got to take a lot of study to understand the science behind all of this stuff. What's the background for Kirsty in that work?
Yeah, so my background in like research and understanding is I studied a PhD and I was an academic when back in Melbourne. Actually, I lived in Melbourne for 4 or 5 years, and so I was blessed to learn how to research and and gather information. And then my son became very unwell and I became very unwell. And his gut infection was so bad and it was undiagnosed that he ended up not being able to talk. He was completely non-functional. He was given a prognosis of being non-verbal, non-functional for the rest of his life. He wouldn't go to school. He wouldn't reach any milestones. He's going to live in a home. This is your life. Like, don't, and of course I was like, my son is going to like be an adventurer. He's going to do this, this, and this. And he just kind of depleted into this literally screaming mess, like banging his head against the wall. And it was so,
for both of you,
deeply heartbreaking. And we had so many roadblocks. It was like, he's just autistic. You're a new mum, there's nothing you can do. But my husband and I were like, kids don't have yellow diarrhea all the time. They don't like get covered in rashes. They don't scream in pain. Like, is it that he's autistic or something going on? And we'd been to Fiji on a surf camp and we caught Giardia. We'd been on a climbing trip up north of South Australia and he'd got Giardia. He got all these ear infections. And this was when he was still at 6, 7, 8, 12 months and he was tracking beautifully. And then by about 15 months, everything just fell apart. He just stopped like learning, growing, functioning. Everything just stopped. And he'd had all these antibiotics and all this Nurofen, and they'd given him PPIs and they'd given him like thickeners, and the list goes on. And so I saw, that side of how, an undiagnosed gut infection is treated. So fast forward, we said, look, something's wrong here. And so there was no way that it could be tested in Australia. We just roadblock. So we sent a biohazard parcel over to Germany. And it turned out that we found that he had a life-threatening infection in his gut. And this particular infection, called Clostridium difficile, releases a neurotoxin that goes into the brain, and it was stopping him from basically like learning to speak, learning to develop, and learning to grow. And so
seriously, something you cannot see is affecting all of the ability to grow on a normal level as a human.
Yeah. And so I, being studying my PhD at the time, I was calling like professors in different places, and we, didn't tell them what department I was from. I'm like, yeah, I'm just ringing to discuss.
Bit of research.
Yeah. And at the time, that was the only way that you could access PubMed, which is where you read all the research studies, is only when you're in that academic community. So I got to read all these research studies and got to meet all of these professors, and we were invited to be part of a research study. And so we flew to Canada, and Noah, myself, and my daughter all had gut transplants. And my son started speaking the next day after his first.
It's almost this is so bizarre that it is. You're studying in that field because it's something that fascinates you, and yet you are almost the worst case scenario of all.
I was in a different field. My PhD was looking at the conflict between recreation users, so mountain bikers, bushwalkers, horse riders in protected area spaces. So I was working with Parks Vic and WA Parks, and my PhD was on something completely different. But because I was in academia, I had access to all of this other stuff. And then I started learning and up all night. And what I'd learned to apply for learning for my PhD, I was then applying to this problem.
Gotcha. And it was that trigger that once the gut health had been sorted and organised, that then the speech came back instantaneously.
Yeah, so we were part of this research. So he's like the first child in the world to have this particular transplant, and he just started speaking and growing and learning, and off he went to school and started racing mountain bikes, and when it was in a triathlon, and it was like, holy moly. So
for you as a mum and for you as parents, the moment then where that realization that you're not going to have to be sort of in a way supporting someone all their life, but having given them the wings to refly and get back on their own travel through life, but it's been tearjerking.
Oh yeah. Like even now I'm like, wow, that was a lot. And then I went back and studied in this area. So I went back and just racked up some more qualifications on top of all the other ones I had before, and then went and really studied in the gut microbiome space and developed my cultures. So they're very unique. So because I couldn't afford the post care from the transplant, and so I was like, we need to solve this. We can't afford the follow-up care. And so that's how I created the cultures, was I researched every particular strain that will rebuild, a gut microbiome, and how could I grow that in a medium that we can afford, and how can I make that happen?
I love it. Like the homemade chemist and physicist was there doing their own work. Yeah. And so what started off then really as being I'm going to call it a cure, because it pretty much was a cure for a member of the family and for yourselves. Then you saw the need within the greater community to start a business.
Yeah. So people just like, what are those cultures? Can I try some? What did you do with your son? Like, what's going on here? And then it just kind of happened from there. So, and now this is the 10th year that Kultured Wellness has been going. So, and very obviously you've got a lot of advocacy work for kids that have like a lot of gut issues, but it's not seen as a gut issue. It's seen as a they've got autism, or they've got ADHD, or they've got OCD, or if they've got these issues, and so then we were one of the first companies in Australia we were the first to use some very comprehensive kind of cutting edge stool testing. And so now, like I've seen, obviously, I don't know, 30,000 samples. It's just ridiculous. And I can literally now look into someone's report and I can say, I bet you can't sleep at night. I bet you're anxious. I bet you get like post-run. I bet you get massive lactic acid issues, and then you get the DOMS for like 4 years after. And I can literally
So much.
yeah,
You know, people can have these Strava accounts and pay for a pro and a premium subscription, and they think the data they're getting for a watch is giving them all they need to know to become a better athlete. It's the internals that give you that data. You can read it, and then you can give someone the information they need to make themselves better.
yeah, 100%. Because if your gut isn't producing and doing what it needs to do, like you will hit a ceiling you will never get to that next level of what you want to do. And so, like for me, like obviously have had quite a number of injuries over over the years, most of them netball actually. But anyway, I'm still
Dangerous
I
girls.
know, I'm still
And boys, sorry, and
oh
boys.
no, I got opinions on that. But like I'm still playing now, like and playing like still playing A League with the 18-year-olds, and like I am completely shocked what my body can do, even though like I'm missing most of my knee and my ankles and bits and pieces, because there's none of that inflammatory stuff happening. So this is
I want you to. I want off the back of this. I'm sure we can have some show notes on this one. We'll put down the bottom of this where we're broadcasting this the information about where, because you mentioned the stool samples. It is so easy to do now to get it done, to sample and sent off and results in.
yeah,
I'd love to get something in there about that in the show
yeah,
notes, and also just about the process with Cultured Wellness. So I imagine you've got a bucket load of fact sheets. The website is culturedwellness.com.au.
yeah. No,
So
just
amazing.
.com.
Just com.
Yeah.
Oh, you're international. You're not just
I
Australia
kind
wide.
of
You're
were like
international, girl.
from the start. We were always an
Yeah.
international company, so yeah, yeah, yeah.
One more thing I wanted to backtrack on. How do you take ferments on a multi-day hike to maintain your diet as you're on the journey? How does that work?
Yes. So that is my next grand adventure of getting into boffin land of science land, which is very exciting. So at the moment, we take very specific probiotic capsules. So that's the ones that you take.
Yeah.
But I've actually been playing around with fermenting out there. So you go
Right.
to bed at night and you fill up your thermos with your oats and actually a culture starter, and you wake up the next morning and you can have like your overnight soured oats and actually make fermented foods out there. So I've been playing around
Wow.
with that a bit, which has been
Because when you do your hikes, you do your cultural wellness led hikes as well with some of your clients, and generally they're the ones that aren't brave enough to go and do the outdoor stuff themselves because they have these issues where they're worried about, I don't want to live on backcountry cuisine. I haven't got enough energy to use the food that's going to get me through. It's going to make me feel worse. So these really are your crash test brilliants, not crash test dummies, that are really the next impetus for part of the business.
Yeah. So leading up to a hike, we spend about 2-3 months going through how do you dehydrate, like real optimum nutrition for when you're out there. So first of all, how do you dehydrate food? And then what food would you dehydrate? And then how do you eat an anti-inflammatory diet out on trail? And how do you eat a diet for like rocking poos every day out there? So what fibers do you need? And how do you lay that out, and then obviously make it lightweight? How do you package it? All those kinds of things. So getting down to a pretty fine art with that one now. So it's definitely no backcountry foods.
It's interesting. So must have been about 3 months ago now, I chatted to Cam Bostock, and Cam Bostock is a multi-day hiker, does really well on his Instagram channel, great storyteller. Cam has partnered up with another guy called Hirsch, and they have developed, this gap in the market, which was there. The people that are doing these big hikes, the PCTs, the Teoraras, all these big hikes around the world, when you're on trail, you have limited access to good quality food. It's usually service stations, or it's rough stop cafes, or what you can carry with you. So being able to keep on top of your gut health and your diet is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
He has obviously worked with you, I think, in the last few months about how can you reduce down something that might be a big thing of ferment and probiotics into something that is usable as a day-to-day capsule, and hence OptiVenture was born.
Yeah. I've had so much fun having chats with those guys because they're just so enthusiastic about bringing to market OptiVenture, because it's just not happening out there. There's no other option. And, you can't take a Blackmore's multi-day out there with you. Apart from the fact that's just wee water, but like it's not going to do anything for what you need out there. So, I literally have had so many grand plans and ideas that I've had over the years. And so when those guys came to me, poor things, I was like, right. I've got ideas. So I'm,
Which must have been great for them, because ultimately they're a couple of guys who love the outdoors, see the gap, but haven't necessarily got that sort of scientific historical knowledge.
Yeah, so I've been doing some mentoring with them and just just supporting them through like what does look like optimum performance out there, and then what do you need, nutrition wise, and also for longevity, the brain stuff, like some of the brain stuff that's coming out now. I'm deeply interested in brain health, but for me, especially like if you're climbing or you're doing some pretty complex stuff, like it can mean the difference between like doing like, I don't know, I think putting up roots and doing some pretty amazing stuff versus just pulling off things. And, I think it can really make or break someone's dream if you get it right. And so I think attention to what they're eating and what, we're trying to do with the OptiVenture stuff, even, some of the sort of hacks that you have on trail, if you've got the runs, or some of the things that people eat to keep it lightweight, there's just so many better options that are still cost effective. They're still lightweight. It's just people don't know about it. It's more just awareness. Yeah.
We took a group to Patagonia, our extreme dreamers. We took our first trip to South America in early March, actually, and we took OptiVenture V 1.0, and it was lovely to sort of be there as the start of this journey has happened. So, the pills are a bit bigger than they need to be, but they're being reduced down. There's a V 2.0. It's just nice to sort of see. And the list, I mean, my eyes at the age of now 50, I'm starting to squint on a few little words. The back of that packet and the sheer number of things that are fitted into that, there's got to be 50 different elements in there that are good for you for the future.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. It's really cool. And it's what we're working on is that the fact that you can put things in your mouth, but your body has to be able to absorb it. So that's a very key distinction. So that even comes down to supplements as well. So that's the grand adventure that we're, really discussing, is that what we want for someone is not only to have that great nutrition or supplementation, but we want their body and their microbes and their digestive system and your oral microbiome to be able to go, I know what to do with that. I'm going to digest it and I'm going to assimilate it and I'm going to shunt it into muscles. I'm going to shunt it into energy, and I'm going to, get some nutrition up into the brain to make great choices. That's when you know that you're really getting the best, is what, not because you can take something and it means nothing. You might as well.
You think it's doing something?
Yes. Yeah. So I feel sad for some people, like, I eat organic and I spend all this money, and I'm like, you're not absorbing a thing. You might as well just eat McDonald's. Like, it's just not happening. God. Yeah. So that's the next part of that, journey is, okay, so we've got key nutrition. Let's level up, the digestive system's performance, that when you're out there and you're tired and you're under-rested and all the things that happen when you're out doing that stuff, that your gut will still absorb it. Because the first thing that happens when we're tired or we're run down or we've pushed our body too hard is our digestive system stops. So, and then we don't absorb anything and we can't get the energy. And that's why people go to goos and they do all sorts of crazy stuff. So
it's to get you along the line, over the line. It's not maintain things and keep you going for the sort of medium to long term, is it? It's definitely one of those things that I sort of now feel there's so many. The gel era, really, really got sprung on us, 15 years ago, 10 years ago maybe, and all of a sudden you'll see people with these belts that have got 10 or 15 of them on an endurance thing. You think if you're just literally squeezing them every 5K to keep yourself alive, you're doing something wrong. Surely. I know. Great marketing, though.
I know. I did a 100-kilometer race once, and you do it as quickly as possible kind of thing. You've done lots of them. And like my knee just just was twice the size and was pointing a different way by like the 92-kilometer mark. And when I reflect now, like, you know, we were just like, have the gels, have the snakes, have like, oh, like no one, like literally it was like this size and pointing that way. And I was like almost like going backwards, like I will get over this line kind of stuff. How I would fuel myself now, like, because I still do every now and again the 50-kilometer mountain bike races. And like I get over the line, I'm like, all right, what else have we got?
Like, quite jovial and enjoying it.
Like
genuine. Well, it's the way we should be, isn't it?
I mean, I don't go fast anymore. That's fine. But I don't cross with injury. I don't cross with pain. I don't wake up the next day and like, oh, I've smashed myself. And then I take, 3 months to get over it and won't get back on the bike again and all this stuff. That
you hate the experience, not enjoy the experience.
Whereas now, like, you just big smiles, like cross the line. And that was...
I don't think I've ever known you without a big smile, Kirsty. I don't think that's changed. Whatever you're putting down, there's the big smile.
Yeah. There was definitely some times where it's...
I want you to give me the 3 starter tips for people who would love to maybe start this journey of bettering their inner health, and the 3 easy, simple steps they can take today or tomorrow.
Yeah. So day 1, when you're planning your adventure, you write out your training plan, and you write out so I used to write out a training plan, and then I would have my timeline, right, of my training, but also, got to have this much money by here. I've got to book this, flight. I've got to, you've got your plans. What I want people to do if they're doing adventure stuff is I also want you to write your gut health plan at that time. Now, if you struggle to make energy, or you know that you've got diarrhea or there's problems, get your gut tested that day. And because that is like taking your bloods at the doctor. It is that important. The test kit comes to your door and then you directly send it back. You don't have to go and see anyone. All those times have changed now. So incorporate your plan at the same time as your, physical body, your outside body, and you're planning for your trip. So step 2 with that is post-trip. That is when it is even more important, because whenever you push your body, you deplete your gut microbiome. And most of the time, if you're going off and doing grand things, you will come home with something, and that's fine. So post-trip, it's not a time to and a lot of times you do get back from a trip and you're like, I never want to see that again, or I need a month to get over it. And most of the time people kind of refuel in different ways. And they eat and they drink. And they kind of wow, that was amazing. And now this is my time to kind of celebrate. But alcohol and sugar and gluten and carbohydrates and all those things is the worst thing that you can do for yourself post a big adventure. Your body is epically depleted. And that's just setting you up for probably 6 months to a year of just ever since that trip, I've just got nothing left in me.
I have the guilt in me at the moment because I know I should be better. I remember when you did your tests on me, that the sugar thing was one thing. I knew about the caffeine because that was obvious with the double espressos. The one thing that I was very surprised about, though, was you made me increase my consumption of butter considerably. Just really in a snapshot.
How did you guess? Because that was my third one. So butter is it's liquid gold for people that want to go and do cool stuff, because it has something called butyrate in it. And butyrate is what lines and feeds the cells in our gut wall, the epithelial cells in our gut wall. And they produce the short chain fatty acids that produce energy. So for me, if I'm tired or if I need to go and do something, I will literally have a spoonful of butter, because it's the most anti-inflammatory available fuel source. So there's no there's no way of getting all of those inflammatory compounds like you would if you ate some snakes, right? Or if you ate or had a goo or whatever else. So it is anti-inflammatory. It's got vitamin D, vitamin A, and it's high caloric energy. and it doesn't require much from the digestive system.
Is there a difference in butters? When you talk about a butter, that's the whole thing. We're not talking about the spreadables, the low fat. We're talking about a pure butter form.
Of course, like it's got to be, grass fed, and it's got to be blessed by the Dalai Lama, and it's got to be like perfect. So, but yes, look, organic grass fed New Zealand, go big and like really spend on your beautiful butter. Lay down a good $6 on a block of butter.
Love it. And butter tea in the Himalayas.
Yes, well, right. Those guys, remember having so many of those like yak, drinks, and you feel different from them. You feel really different. So
once you can get it down your system.
Yeah. So we don't need to worry about the cholesterol thing in butter. That whole side of things has been completely debunked. We've moved quite a lot in the research in understanding how fat fuels our body and our brain. So we don't need to fear fat anymore. But working out how to get energy where it's not expensive to the body, it actually helps the body and propels the body forward. That's the secret sauce there.
I know my things I've got to stick on to Siri now. One of them is that on my shopping list is going to go real butter.
Yeah.
One is going to be more fermented foods.
Yeah.
And one is going to be to get my next stool sample done and the results sent into you so you can see how bad I've been for myself. Is that right?
All good. You never know.
You never know. Fingers crossed, yeah. Yeah, we just had Easter. It's never going to be a good run after Easter, let's be honest.
Easter.
What have you got in the pipeline? What's coming up on the calendar for you in the next year in terms of life adventure?
We've got 2 big Kultured Wellness hikes coming up this year, which is very exciting. So down in the Victorian high country. So, and a bit more of a challenging one this year for peeps that want to kind of give it a step up, and then also that real beginner, how do I eat out there? How do I carry a pack? What the heck would I take? Like the real kind of hand holding, that because I'd rather just hold people's hand and get them out there than just have that block of not going. So we've got that coming up, and lots of like mini adventures for me, and getting out as much with the kids as I can. So another mountain bike race this year, those kinds of things.
Good.
Yeah.
I reckon I'm going to cross paths with you at an adventure festival somewhere in Australia, because that's how it seems to happen. Yeah. How do we look at the digital platforms? What's the best way of keeping in touch?
Yeah, so Instagram is Kultured Wellness, Facebook is Kultured Wellness, and then Kultured Wellness.
Kultured with a K?
Kultured with a K. Yeah.
Need to get that bit right.
Yeah.
Kirsty, I'm sure we will, like I said, cross paths in the coming months, but it's been fascinating having a deep dive inside. I've got my checklist of things to do. From everybody at the Wild Earth community, from all the Wild Earth things watching tonight, thank you for your time and thank you for your knowledge.
Thanks, Ben.